Jill Biden insults Melania Trump. Go back to Slovenia. Melania's response shocks America. So tell us, Melania. Joy Behar leaned forward, voice dripping with sarcasm. How does it feel to be the quiet puppet of the most controversial man in America? Or are you just here to defend the Mar-a-Lago curtain budget again? The audience chuckled awkwardly. The stage lights caught the glint in Joy's eye. She was playing to her bass. Melania Trump, seated gracefully in a pale blue dress, didn't blink. She folded her hands calmly on her lap and stared across the table. I speak when it matters, not to entertain people with bitterness. The studio went quiet for a beat. Joy's smirk faltered. Jill Biden, seated beside Joy, gave a forced laugh. Well, some people are just better at staying silent when they should speak up. Melania turned slowly toward Jill, and some speak often, but never say the truth. The tension was sharp enough to slice through the teleprompter. It was supposed to be a celebratory episode. Two first ladies on stage discussing unity and women's leadership. But Joy Behar had different plans. She wasn't just a host today, she was a partisan sniper. You defend a man who separated children at the border, mocked women, and dodged accountability, Joy said, eyes narrowing. You stood beside him in silence. That makes you complicit. Melania's jaw tightened, but she didn't raise her voice. Standing beside someone doesn't mean sharing every word they say, but it means believing in something bigger than gossip and TV spin. Joy chuckled, eyes darting to the crowd. Sounds like spin to me. Melania leaned forward, voice steady. And what do you believe in Joy, applause, hashtags, mocking accents, and women you disagree with? The crowd stirred. One audience member even clapped just once. It was enough. Jill interjected quickly, trying to regain momentum. Let's not forget, Melania, your own silence allowed many to question your independence. Or did you approve of everything your husband did? No, I didn't, Melania said calmly. But I didn't betray him either by pretending he was fine when he wasn't. Jill's face stiffened. Joy raised a brow. Melania continued. At least I didn't forge his name on government authorizations to push through shady contracts when he was too ill to know. Gasps echoed across the studio. Joy blinked. What are you talking about? Melania reached into her clutch and calmly pulled out a folded document. This is one of them, signed with Joe Biden's auto pen. Routed through your cousin's firm, Jill, $780,000 for consulting. Services never rendered. The camera zoomed in. Jill's hand went to her mic, but she said nothing. Joy snapped. This is a talk show, not a court. You can't just throw accusations like that. Melania looked directly at her. Then maybe you should invite fewer politicians and more people who tell the truth. The crowd shifted again. Some are uncomfortable, some nodding. Joy attempted a laugh. You think one document makes you a whistleblower? Melania folded it back and returned it to her bag. No, but it starts a conversation your side doesn't want to have. The segment producers began frantically whispering in the control room. Jill leaned in, whispering something to Joy, who nodded tightly. Then Joy looked back at the camera. Well, that took a turn. Maybe we'll cool it with some commercials unless Melania wants to accuse me of smuggling campaign funds while we're at it. Melania offered a small, deliberate smile. Not yet. Commercial break. The camera cut, but the damage was done. Social media lit up. The View meltdown. Ata Melania speaks. Joy, V's Truth all began trending. Backstage, a young assistant ran up to Melania, phone shaking in her hand. Ma'am, that document, someone just leaked 5 more like it. It's all over Twitter. One links to a pharma deal, $1.2 million. Auto pen. Melania nodded. Then the truth is moving on its own now. And that was just the beginning. The studio air had not yet settled when the cameras came back from commercial. Joy Behar's usual grin was gone, replaced by something tighter forced. Jill Biden sat straighter in her chair, eyes down, not meeting Melania's gaze. Welcome back, Joy said, her voice missing its usual bounce. Things got spirited, but we're professionals. Let's get back to celebrating women's leadership. Melania sat motionless, spine-straight, hands in her lap. Celebration should not silence accountability, she said softly. Jill turned, voice edged with politeness that cut like glass. And accountability doesn't mean airing conspiracy theories on national TV. Melania didn't blink. Conspiracies hide in silence. I've had enough of silence. Joy leaned in, grasping for control. You're not on trial here, Melania. No, Melania replied, but maybe someone should be. The audience murmured. Something in the crowd had shifted. No longer was Melania just the target. Now she was the anchor holding the conversation down while the hosts scrambled to spin. Jill tried to regain moral high ground. You say you stand for women, but where were you when immigrant children were locked in cages? I was in the room. Melania said, her accent thicker now, not with hesitation, but with resolve, pushing questioning, demanding answers. Silently, yes, because yelling does not save children. Actions do. The panel was momentarily silent. Then Joy scoffed. Funny, your actions seemed to involve designer shoes and Christmas decorations while Rome burned. Melania smiled faintly. And yet I never forged a signature to fund silence. The blow landed like thunder. A producer whispered frantically to Joy through her earpiece, viewer sentiment is flipping. Twitter's eating this up. Play it cooler. But Joy was already committed. She rolled her eyes. Let's be real, Melania. You're here now because you want relevance. You want to be liked again. You lost your spotlight. Melania's gaze turned steel. I didn't lose the spotlight. I gave it up. There's a difference. And why now? Jill asked, trying again. Why today? Why not before? Because I was trying to protect my husband, Melania said. Even when he was insulted, ridiculed, misunderstood, I stayed silent. But now I see that silence lets others steal lie and frame the narrative for power. Joy folded her arms. So now you're the whistleblower. Melania turned to the audience, not to Joy. No, I am just the voice that finally stopped pretending. More applause. Jill shifted, clearly rattled. You say you love this country, but you spent years letting your husband divide it. And you spent years forging unity while hiding contracts that drained it, Melania said. Joy cut in. Okay, enough. We're not here to litigate every administration. Let's talk about solutions. Tell us, Melania, what's your grand plan? Melania nodded. Truth. First then, healing. I don't need a plan. I need transparency. Joy turned sarcastic. From someone who wouldn't even show us her Christmas plans without a script, Melania didn't flinch. Better a script of decorations than a signature of fraud. Jill bit her lip. The crowd was split, some clapping, some frozen. But no one looked away. Just then, a producer rushed a note to Joy. Joy read it silently, her face tightening. Someone backstage had just confirmed the existence of more leaked contracts posted live on a watchdog site, one linked directly to a Jill Biden family associate. $1.2 million auto pen, no matching service records. Joy crumpled the note without a word. Melania, as if sensing it, added gently, when truth begins to walk, lies don't run, they fall. Cut to commercial. The lights dimmed again, the third commercial in less than 15 minutes. This wasn't routine. It was triage. Producers huddled behind the cameras. Joy's assistant clutched a tablet, her knuckles pale. Ratings were skyrocketing, but so was panic. Hashtags like Melania Unleashed in the View collapse and Auto Pengate was trending globally. Meanwhile, on the studio floor, Melania sat still. She hadn't stood. She hadn't raised her voice. Yet the room now revolved around her. Joy Behar was no longer grinning. Jill Biden was visibly shaken, shifting in her seat, fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on her knee. Offstage, an intern whispered to the showrunner, "We just got a call from the White House press office. They're watching." Inside the green room, security whispered into earpieces. There were concerns, audience reactions, protests outside a delivery van parked too long across the street. But on set, Melania remained unbothered. As the cameras rolled again, Joy's voice cracked as she said, "We're back on The View, and things are a bit heated." She tried to smile. It looked more like a grimace. "Let's shift gears." Joy continued, trying to regain footing. "Let's talk about family values. Dr. Biden, you've spoken passionately about supporting veterans and healthcare reforms." Jill nodded, regaining poise. "Yes, and I'm proud of the work we've done to extend care to underserved communities. We fought to restore dignity." Melania interrupted softly but firmly. "Unless that care was delayed because funds were diverted." Jill froze. "Excuse me?" Melania didn't raise her voice. "How many times did you use Joe's auto pen, Dr. Biden?" The studio fell silent again. Jill glanced toward the producers, pleading, not commanding. Joy cut in sharp. Melania, this is a TV show, not a congressional hearing. No, Melania said, but it's the first time in years that someone has dared to say this on your turf. Joy! Jill tried to recover. You're spreading misinformation, dangerous accusations. Melania leaned forward. Then sue me. Gasps. Jill paled. Joy opened her mouth to object, but before she could speak, Melania pulled a folder from her clutch. A second document slid out. This one was dated March 14th, 2023. Another signature. Another family connection. A contract for $900 never fulfilled. Joy shot a glance at a producer off camera. The signal was clear cut to black, but the director hesitated. Ratings, viewers, headlines. Melania continued. Every forged document has a trail, a timestamp, a name, and now a face. She didn't need to say more. Jill looked down. You don't understand. Joe wasn't well. People stepped in. I didn't want him embarrassed. And you covered it with signatures, Melania said. You call it protection, but families waiting for surgery called it betrayal. Joy finally snapped. You don't get to be the moral compass, Melania. You were silent for 4 years. Melania's voice dropped to a whisper. Yes. And silence nearly destroyed me. But it saved my son from hearing his mother scream on television. That landed. The crowd, previously divided, was now mostly quiet. Not disengaged, just focused. Joy sputtered. So you're the hero now. No, Melania said. But I am no longer the scapegoat. A beat. Then Jill quietly, I didn't forget them for me. But you signed them anyway, Melania said, and you let others call it care. A producer's voice crackled in the control room. This isn't just a meltdown, it's a reckoning. Meanwhile, outside the studio, a crowd gathered. People held up signs, truth, politics, and we believe Melania. Others waved American flags. A few veterans saluted when Melania's image appeared on the outdoor screen. Inside, Joy tried one last pivot. If this is all so righteous, why now? Why here? Why not testify instead of ambushing us on a talk show? Melania met her eyes. Because this show has spent years mocking me and millions of women like me. This isn't revenge. It's the first moment you can't control with laughter. The control room whispered, We're getting more views than election night. Jill's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. Melania, I made mistakes. Melania turned to her slowly. Jill's voice cracked. I thought I was protecting Joe. I thought I was doing the right thing. For whom? Melania asked. For donors or for the families who buried loved ones waiting for help? No response. Joy threw down her note cards. This is insane. This isn't what we do here. Melania looked at her with a strange gentleness. Maybe that's the problem. And for the first time in the show's long, loud history, Joy had no comeback. The cameras didn't cut. The lights didn't fade. Melania sat back, hands folded. A first lady once mocked for silence, now commanding the room with it. The View had seen its fair share of tense interviews and spirited debates, but nothing like this. Producers were now whispering emergency codes, and social media analytics were lighting up like a Christmas tree. Every news outlet from Fox News to MSNBC was cutting into their broadcast to stream the feed. This wasn't daytime talk anymore. It was a national drama. Joy Behar, normally the unshakable queen of snark, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Her signature sarcasm had vanished, replaced with stiff smiles and defensive posture. Jill Biden sat beside her, visibly pale, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her note cards. Meanwhile, Melania remained unmoved. Her fingers were still lightly resting on the damning documents, eyes calm, voice unreadable. Her presence wasn't loud. It was seismic. Joy tried to rally. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget this is a show about dialogue and discovery. We're not here to attack each other. Melania tilted her head. Then perhaps you should have started with questions, not insults. Boom. Even the studio crew stopped to look. Jill leaned forward. Melania, I came here in good faith. You're turning this into an indictment. Melania replied, measured and slow. I'm turning this into the truth. At that moment, behind the cameras, a young staffer ran in holding a phone. He whispered to the director another document leak had just gone live. This one was worse. A $1.1 million consulting payout rubber-stamped with Joe Biden's auto pen linked to a company registered to a Delaware address owned by Jill Biden's college roommate. It was circulating on X with time-stamped screenshots and PDF evidence. On-screen, Joy squirmed. "We don't validate anonymous documents. That could be fabricated." Melania smiled for the first time. "And yet for years you validated every headline that mocked me." Gasps. Again. Jill's defenses were crumbling. "I never meant to hurt anyone. Joe didn't even know most of this. He wasn't well." I tried to keep things running." Melania softened. "Just slightly. I understand protecting someone you love," she said. "But you didn't protect the people who depended on him it landed." Outside crowds were swelling, candles, posters, signs reading justice for the silenced and we believe Melania. Police formed barricades, but it wasn't a protest. It was something deeper. A gathering of the forgotten. On camera, Joy regained some footing. "Let's get real, Melania. You think this is heroic? You were silent for 4 years." Melania turned steel in her gaze. "I was silent because every time I spoke, people like you twisted it." Joy snapped. "You were complicit." Melania replied, "No, I was cornered. Until now." The moderator finally stepped in. "We need a break." But Melania said no. No more breaks. The audience clapped. Jill stood up. "I think this has gone far enough." Melania looked up at her, voice cool. "Then, sit down, Dr. Biden. You haven't heard the names yet." She pulled a new page from the folder. Veterans denied aid, nurses who lost jobs, a teacher whose classroom grant disappeared, all tied to those contracts. Jill sat down. Melania read each name, not as bullets, as prayers. Even Joy couldn't interrupt. Not now. As the list ended, Melania looked at the crowd. This isn't about politics. It's about promises broken, lives cut short, and truth buried under silence. The screen faded to black as a single word echoed in every home watching enough. The fallout from Melania's poised defiance rippled far beyond the studio walls. Joy Behar's mocking tone and Jill Biden's dismissive remarks were no longer confined to a morning talk show. Clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire, and hashtags like Melania silences, The View, and First Lady Showdown trended globally. America was watching not just for the entertainment, but for the tectonic shift unfolding live. Producers scrambled behind the scenes. The View's damage control team drafted carefully worded statements, but it was already too late. The narrative had slipped through their fingers. Melania didn't chase the cameras. She didn't seek more airtime. Instead, she disappeared from the headlines for 2 days, allowing the public to fill in the silence. And they did. Across the country, veterans' mothers and blue-collar workers rallied behind her. She had said what many quietly felt but never voiced. That silence wasn't submission. It was restraint, and when she finally chose to speak, the weight of her words reverberated like a national heartbeat. Meanwhile, Joy Behar faced mounting pressure. Editorials criticized her for turning a women's leadership forum into a partisan attack. Her usual supporters on social media splintered. Some defended her, but many questioned why she had gone so personal so quickly against someone who hadn't thrown the first stone. Producers convened emergency meetings. Should we invite Melania back, issue a formal apology on air? Joy scoffed at the idea, her pride bruised but not broken. It's just a media cycle. It'll pass. But it didn't. Each day, more testimonies emerged. Whistleblowers released documents, and former White House staff confirmed that the signatures Melania referenced during her takedown of Jill were real. The financial trails led to consulting firms connected to Jill's circle. It wasn't just a verbal sparring match anymore, it was the unraveling of a carefully managed facade. Jill Biden in private panicked. "I didn't know those contracts would surface. I didn't think she'd have the proof." One of her closest aides whispered, "It's not just Melania now. The documents are everywhere." The View's ratings dropped sharply in the weeks following the incident. Loyal viewers felt betrayed by the overt hostility, by the loss of what was once a space for challenging yet balanced conversations. Joy's co-hosts distanced themselves, some expressing discomfort over how far the ambush went. Joy clung to her defiance, but the cracks showed. Then came the real fracture. A former government staffer, Natalie Brooks, stepped forward on live television. Shaking emotional, she revealed emails and memos implicating Jill Biden's office in knowingly processing auto pen contracts while President Biden was sedated or absent. I was told to push them through, she confessed. I was told the vice president would have approved, but I knew it wasn't right. Melania, watching from the East Wing, remained silent. Her silence, once a subject of ridicule, now became a fortress respected untouchable. Journalists pressed for her response. Her team offered none. But a week later, she appeared unexpectedly at a community event in rural Pennsylvania. No cameras, no formal press, just families, veterans, nurses. She spoke quietly, briefly. When truth finds you, it does not knock. It enters, and it changes the room. She hugged an elderly widow who whispered, "Thank you for saying what no one dared to." Meanwhile, Joy's public image eroded. The initial confidence with which she had mocked Melania transformed into defensiveness. She attempted to spin the narrative on subsequent shows, but audiences no longer bought it. When she tried to invoke her long career and contributions to political discourse, one audience member captured on a hot mic muttered, "Then maybe she should have known better." Social media flared again. The White House, under growing bipartisan pressure, was forced to open a formal ethics inquiry into the auto pen contracts. Jill Biden's allies abandoned her in waves. Her scheduled public appearances were canceled. Invitations rescinded. Joy's producers proposed a live apology episode. She resisted at first, but ratings dictated the move. Melania, meanwhile, declined all high-profile interviews. She granted only one to a small independent journalist, Maria Vasquez, known for her unfiltered reporting. In a sunlit library, Melania explained, "I didn't want this moment to be about me. I wanted people to remember that silence doesn't mean you're blind, and kindness doesn't mean you have no teeth," Maria asked. "Did you know your words would trigger all this?" Melania's smile was faint. "I knew they would hear me. I didn't know they would finally listen." The next morning, on live television, Joy Behar faced the nation. Her tone, stripped of arrogance, betrayed the weight of what had unfolded. "I pushed too hard," she admitted. "I crossed a line. I thought I was defending what I believed in, but I forgot that belief is not a weapon." The audience's reaction was muted. No applause, just silence. Joy added, "To Melania, I owe a direct apology. I mocked you. I questioned your dignity. I was wrong." Melania did not respond publicly, but a letter arrived at the studio days later, handwritten on simple stationery. It read, "We all misjudge. We all misspeak. I accept your apology not for me, but for the women watching who needed to see what reconciliation can look like." It was signed simply Melania. The letter was posted in the View's green room, a quiet reminder. Yet the reckoning was not over. Jill Biden, pressured by congressional leaders, agreed to a public hearing. She entered the chamber with trembling steps, no longer flanked by allies. When asked whether she knowingly pushed unauthorized contracts, she paused, then answered, "Yes, I did. And I convinced myself it was for the right reasons." Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed. But the most viral moment came when Jill, voice cracking, added, "Melania Trump showed more courage in that moment than I did in years." The crowd was silent. Melania, watching from the privacy of her residence, whispered, "Truth isn't about winning. It's about being willing to lose comfort for clarity." By now, The View had reshaped its format, introducing new hosts pivoting toward less aggressive debates. Joy Behar's role diminished, her influence waning. Some guests canceled their appearances, unwilling to be part of a legacy that had misfired so publicly. In a quiet moment, Joy reflected to a staffer, "I thought I had the room. I didn't realize the room had already moved." Melania's restraint had become a symbol. Not rage, not a spectacle, just the truth standing still. And the nation listened. The storm didn't pass. It shifted. Congressional hearings were set into motion. The leaked auto pen memos, whistleblower statements, and forged contract trails were now subjects of federal review. Headlines screamed of betrayal at the highest levels of systemic negligence masked behind press conferences and perfumed smiles. Melania stayed silent, not from fear, but from resolve. Her public statement, offered via a simple press release, read, "I said what needed to be said. Now let those in power prove what should have never been hidden." The View underwent a dramatic overhaul. Joy Behar's status was downgraded. Ratings continued to plummet. Viewers demanded accountability, not entertainment masquerading as righteousness. One network executive confessed anonymously, "We underestimated her. We forgot that quiet doesn't mean weak." Jill Biden retreated from the spotlight, her aides shielding her from the fallout. But silence didn't buy sympathy. Not anymore. By the second week, more testimonies emerged. Former administrative officers confirmed timelines, discrepancies, and authorizations, and improper financial routing. Investigations now included not just the White House inner circle, but also political fundraisers, lobbyist connections, and third-party contractors. The scandal was dubbed Signature Gate. Melania watched from a distance. When she finally appeared again, it was at Arlington National Cemetery. She laid a wreath alone, unannounced, in front of rows of forgotten heroes. Cameras caught her silhouette in the rain umbrella in hand, the image going viral within hours. Caption, "She never shouted, but she was always heard." Even critics softened. A liberal commentator on MSNBC admitted, "I never thought I'd say this, but Melania Trump may have just redefined courage in public service." Her next appearance was a quiet one at a support center for military families. A mother clutched her hand and said, "They told us to wait. That funding was delayed. Now I know why. Thank you." Melania replied gently, "I didn't want to speak." But too many waited in silence. Some never got to speak at all. Congress passed a bipartisan resolution to form an ethics review committee on unauthorized federal signings. Melania was invited to testify. She declined. "I'm not the victim," she told a journalist. "The families are. Let them speak first." Instead, she submitted a written statement. It began simply, "Dignity is not a decoration. It is a duty." Public approval soared. Journalists, once dismissive, now quoted her with reverence. "America isn't looking for saints," wrote one columnist. "It's looking for a spine." Back on The View, Joy attempted to regain ground. Her apology, though well written, lacked the soul of accountability. She teared up on camera, but many noted her timing right before a book launch. Melania didn't respond. She was too busy. Working with military advocates, she launched the True Sign Initiative, a national effort to ensure all federal signings required verified conscious oversight and bipartisan review. What had started as a whispered insult on live TV had now become legislation. The moment had outgrown the moment. In Philadelphia, a statue was commissioned not of Melania, but of a mother holding a letter. The plaque read, "To those who waited, to those who never got the call back. We see you." Barron Trump, usually silent on public affairs, posted one sentence on X, "She spoke for all of us." America wasn't just listening now, it was changing. A former Clinton advisor tweeted, "I may not support her politics, but I support what she stood for that day." Melania returned to The View not as a guest, but as the subject of a panel discussion titled, "When Grace Disrupts Power." Joy didn't host that episode. The final scene that month wasn't a speech or a march, it was dinner. Melania, seated with families from all 50 states, listened as stories were shared. No cameras, no spotlights, just stories. And when a teenager from Missouri stood and said, "My dad died waiting for help," you gave him a voice, Melania simply stood, embraced him, and said, "Then he's the one who gave me mine." The country stood still, and perhaps started again.